Union Command Science Carrier. I saw their stats on this thing and I thought this is going to be an amazing carrier platform because it has two things that every carrier needs. It has command seating and it has intel seating. I guess it also has two hangar bays, but nobody's trying to put a carrier build on a Hydra. Actually, that's an amazing idea. I should write that down. So yes, this is the carrier build, which means I'm going to be focusing specifically on buffing the damage output of my pets, which means I'm not going to be focusing as much on my own. Which is why some things that may seem counterintuitive for doing DPS are on here, and other things like you would expect me to put on here are not. One of the things you may have noticed is the Warp Core, which happens to be the Dyson Warp Core, or the Obelisk Warp Core if I'm going to be more specific, from an episode mission that I can't be bothered to read up the name of. The reason why I'm using this Warp Core is because of the 4-piece. When it creates an Obelisk Swarmer every 1 second with up to 8 of them active at the same time, that basically gives me an extra hangar bay, and those Obelisk Swarmers are very powerful for a set bonus. And that is also why I am running Reactive Anti-Proton Cascade Emitter from the Obelisk, because that pairs into the 4-piece, which also conveniently fits in with the Ancient Omni and the Subspace Reactor Tunneling Field. There you are. The rest of my drivetrain is fairly normal. I'm running the Discovery 2-piece to get some extra hull regen in. Another thing, I'm not going to be focusing as much on buffing my shields, and I'll get into why later. So I'm not going to be trying to keep my shields up with anything. So I'm going to be hull tanking for a lot of it, and the Discovery 2-piece is very good for hull tanking. Admittedly, I should have probably used a strategic inhibiting secondary deflector here, but I didn't have the dilithium to go upgrade another one, and I'm already running on dilithium as it is. So I just use a strategic deteriorating secondary deflector, strategic just for the small energy weapon damage buff. Impulse engines are the usual prevailing innovated impulse engines. And for my weapons, I'm basically using Baal anti-proton beam arrays. I haven't got these re-engineered. I'm also using just a regular anti-proton beam because Omni restrictions are stupid and I can't slot 2 set Omnis. If I could, I would be running the Baal 2-piece. The reason why I'm running Baal weapons specifically is because dilithium transporters proc, the one that gives you extra radiation damage on your energy weapons, gets procced like crazy upon the Baal refractions. So if I did have a 2-piece, that would be happening a hell of a lot more. But as it is, some devs can't be bothered to move out of their stance, so we're stuck with this how it is. In my device slots, it's just the same usual arrangement. I've got reactive armor catalyst for the quick heals, deuterium surplus for the quick movement, engine's Nox battery to power fleet power network array, which is going to be working overtime on this build, the Antares distress protocol to give me haste and for me and my pets, as well as the damage bonus, and Kobayashi Maru transponder for the buffs. For my consoles, most if not most of this stuff is going to be buffing my pets, which the first console in fact is not doing that. This is the console of Gomtu Evolve. The reason why I have this console on is entirely for the passive buff. The scaling damage resistance buff that scales up as my shield capacity decreases. Because it's something on my build that's going to be constantly dropping my shields, I'm basically going to have no shields permanently, which means I get a hell of a lot of damage resistance basically all the time. And the other one is just an advanced engineering hang-up power transmission. The reason why I have this is because it basically does what you think it does. It buffs my hang-up hits, and it does that pretty damn well. You can stack more of these, however I decided not to for the sake of other potentially more impactful damage buffs. Speaking of the pets, I really should introduce you to them. These are the Kelvin Timeline Assault Drones, which recently unbound off the Vengeance, and they're also on the Armstrong. I don't know why they were put on the Armstrong, it doesn't really make sense. It's like putting Callistos on the higher Earther class, but who am I to complain? I use these specifically because not only are they fitting in with the Kelvin theme, despite the fact that the rest of my build definitely is not, they've also been discovered to be doing pretty good damage output dealers. And they also have their own copy of Fire at Will 1, which means I don't need to run a superior area denial. In my engineering consoles, I'm running custom power matrix, not so much for the offensive buffs, which I'm going to be using anyway, but just because of 20% recharge speed for bridge officer abilities. So combining this with Photonic Officer 1 is going to basically keep all my cooldowns up, and I also am running Boimler to help with that. In the next console, we have the Hydra console from the Hydra. Fun fact, the console, if you spell it out, it actually is an acronym for Hydra. The reason why I'm doing this basically is because it is basically built to buff pets. It has a passive 30% turn speed, flight speed, and damage my hanger pets and targetable torpedoes. And the clicky of it is really handful for relocating your pets, and it's also not a bad damage output dealer. In my science consoles, we have the console off of the ship shared targeting network. When I click this, it gives me a 20% bonus damage output and 40% bonus all damage resistance ratings versus AoE, damage over time, and hazards. But it does a hell of a lot more to my pets, giving them 40% damage all bonus damage, 75% bonus all damage resistance rating, and 40% bonus turn rate and flight speed. Those are some massive buffs for my hanger pets, and they are going to be amazing with this. Next up, I have power transfer emitters from the Friendship Command Galactic Carrier. This gives me some extra crit chance and gives 10% crit chance to my hanger pets. And whenever I hit the hanger pet with the effects of this console, it gives them a massive amount of crit chance. I'm pretty sure it comes out to around about 30% crit chance for a singular hanger pet when I hit them with it. Next is Fleet Power Network Array. Everybody knows why this is here. It's with its massive haste buffs, which also scale with your hanger pets. So they basically just got a fuck ton of haste, and I have a fuck ton of haste. So yeah, that's cool. And yes, for that person that's inevitably going to write a comment saying, oh, YouTube censorship is going to get you. I don't fucking care. Next up, I've got DPRM. This basically is just for massive bonus damage buff and whole regen and bonus damage resistance rating. It's a fantastic tanking console and it's a fantastic damage dealing console. It's still considered one of the best consoles in the game despite its age. Subspace Reactor Tunneling Field, do I even need to say any more? It recharges your consoles and gives you some temporary hull. Actually, there's something I need to tell you about this. I am using the trick to cancel out the target of your teleport, which basically cancels the teleport on this console. I get this might be considered exploiting, however, I've been teleported too many times inside of a damn gateway in ISE to think it's funny anymore. For my tactical consoles, I am running Coordinated Engagement Solution from the Garrett Command Dreadnought. This gives my pets 20% firing cycle haste permanently, and it gives a whole bunch of buffs whenever I target an enemy with it, which includes 10% bonus all damage, which scales up, 20% all damage resistance rating, and which also scales up, drain expertise, control expertise, and it switches my pet's current target to the one that I hit with this console. Next is the lithium transporter. It gives me no weapon draw cost in firing cycle haste, and gives me additional radiation damage on my energy weapons. Those effects also will be applying to my pets. And finally, I have high energy communications network from any of the support carriers. It gives me plus rank to all my hanger pets whenever I activate it, and it also gives me and my allies 100% accuracy, 100% defense, and 20% shield resistance, as well as doing some minor debuffs to enemies. My specializations are nothing interesting until primary, temporal, secondary. There's not really much that buffs hanger pets, so I'm just choosing what I can to buff my own damage. For the personal space traits, a lot of the stuff is stuff that you've already seen, so I'll just only tell you about the ones that actually specifically are buffing hanger pets, and I'll just list the rest of them on screen. First up, we have holographic barrage decoys. My hanger pets are invulnerable until they're 2 seconds after they first take damage. Feel the weight of our presence. Any of my allies get granted stacking damage resistance debuff to enemies, which scales up with how many you have. Enhance and Protect, which admittedly I completely forgot to use inside of the Enhance and Protect whenever I activate a captain ability, up to 10 pets and 10 kilometers permanently gain 10% crit chance, 10 accuracy rating, 50% flight speed, and 50% turn rate. Independent Wingmate, the first hanger pet I launch gains 200% bonus damage and 200 damage resistance rating. And Wing Commander to buff up the rank gained by all my hanger pets. For the Starship traits, first up we got Breen's Free Fire to extend the duration of fire at will. I've just noticed that's still saying it's extending fire at will by 9 seconds. It says extending fire at will's duration by 9 seconds. Let me check something. Okay, so that's just a tooltip misinfo. It's still giving 5 seconds. It's not giving 19 seconds of fire at will. I'll submit a bug report about that. Anyway, the next two Starship traits, Cooperation is a dominant strategy. Whenever my allied hanger pets get hit by a Bridge Officer ability, they gain 20% bonus damage for 30 seconds. And when in flagship staffing, which basically, if I do the same thing, they get 33% flag cycle haste for 10 seconds. And that is why I am running indeed so many on this build. It's sacrificing my shields to apply temporary hold to any teammates and allies nearby, which include my hanger pets. Which means that not only are basically all of my pets getting the buff, I don't have to be very active about it, because I can just put it on my spam bar and go. Now this is why I did not care much about my shields. They're already going to be dropped by this anyway, so I might as well buff my whole. Next up is Strike Recruit Command Authority. This gives me 30% bonus damage to my hanger pets. Repurpose Cargo Bay Hanger, which gives me an extra hanger bay of Advanced Valkyrie Fighter Squadrons, which is very nice. Retreat from this ship, Event Horizon Safeguard, which gives me 20% rank up XP, 10% crit chance, and 20% crit severity for all my hanger pets. And whenever I use an Anomaly Bridge Officer ability, it grants my hanger pets immunity to damage for 5 seconds. That last bit has the 20-second cooldown, not the passive stuffs. And finally, Scramble Fighters to heal up my pets, giving them a bit of a bonus damage buff and make them immune to damage. My Bridge Officer stations are nothing really that useful. The only real weird thing here is my Fire at Will being at rank 1. Because I'm not that focused on my own damage, I felt it was a good idea to sacrifice Fire at Will 2 for Fire at Will 1 to be able to slot Attack Pattern Beta 1 on this build, which will debuff the enemies that I hit, allowing my pets to deal even more damage. Most of this other stuff is going to be unconventional systems triggers, however, for my Commander Science/Command Seat, I am running things a little bit differently. First up, Suppression Barrage 3 to debuff the enemies I hit, making them deal less damage and less accurate, which basically just helps everyone. Honestly, if you're doing random TFOs and you have the room to slot this Bridge Officer ability, I recommend you do. It is just amazing. Call Emergency Artillery 1, because hucking 3 Defiance at your enemy is never not going to be funny. Needs an Ameni 1 to be buffing my hanger pets. And Overwhelm Emitters 1, because honestly, I did not think that there was really anything else that was worth that slot. And I thought maybe healing up my pets a bit more wouldn't hurt. Spoiler alert, this did jack shit. My duty officers aren't really that much special. I have 2 energy weapons officers above the crit chance on my weapons. I have a quartermaster for reducing the recharge time of my batteries, which includes the dual batteries I have here. And I have 3 flight deck officers to reduce the recharge time of my hangar bays, which in turn triggers Scramble Fighters more often. In an IC run you just saw, my build ended up doing just shy of 500k DPS, which is honestly pretty damn impressive considering the amount of lag we've been having here lately. Please, devs, for the love of whatever you pray to, please push those performance updates out, else Australians are suffering. Going into the analysis here, you can see that the bulk of my damage did come from the Kelvin Timeline Soldiers doing 173k on their own. They certainly weren't joking when they said those pets do pretty good, however they did do a little bit less than I was expecting. On my previous time testing this sort of build on the Friendship, the pets that I had on those, which were the Elite Obelisk Swarmers, ended up doing a bit more than this, which I'm wondering if I had swapped to those, maybe they would still do it just as well. I still wouldn't have to swap at Superior Area Denial on them because they are bugged and don't get buffed by that. Anyway, you can see just under that, I did 65k from my Fire at Will 1 from the Bowel Anti-Proton Beam Arrays. Honestly, surprising it even did that much. Underneath that's at 63k, you see the Obelisk Swarmers there. That's pretty good for just a set bonus. Under that's the Lithium Lace Weaponry 59k, doing a bit less than I was expecting, but still pretty good. And Advanced Valkyrie Fire Scorcher doing 39k, which is honestly not that bad for a trade. If I had Superior Area Denial, maybe they would be buffed. I don't know if they do get buffed by that, and I'm not going to check. It is 4 AM. So that was my carrier support build on the Newton Command Science Dreadnought. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, you know the drill. It really does help me out, and it's really motivating to see you guys' support on my videos. Anyway, I'm Cinder. Have a very happy rest of your day, and until next time, keep having fun, and I'll see you around. Goodbye!